Shootings.
3 weeks ago, Trayvon Martin, an unarmed black teenager, was shot down by a white neighborhood watchman who claimed self-defense.
Fights.
This man just punched me in the face.
Okay, is he still there?
Lawsuits.
George Zimmerman, the former Florida neighborhood watchman, has filed a $100 million lawsuit against the family of Trayvon Martin.
Today we'll tell the story of one of the most infamous men in modern American history that set in place social movements still being grappled with a decade later. And to this very day he's out there, with the world waiting to see what he'll do next. On July 13, 2013, George Zimmerman was acquitted on second-degree murder and manslaughter after having shot a 17-year-old black teenager named Trayvon Martin while on patrol as a neighborhood watch coordinator. George had evidently tailed the young man, believing him to be connected to a series of recent burglaries in the neighborhood. After an altercation between the two, at some point a shot was discharged from Zimmerman's gun, killing the teen, with George claiming self-defense, citing Florida's Stand Your Ground law. The entire case had quickly become a hot topic of debate amongst broad sections of the United States public as well as people around the world. And while there is plenty to discuss about details surrounding the killing, there is already plenty of coverage discussing that part of the story. What we're going to dive into today is the often untold misadventures of George Zimmerman after the trial. Having been the focus of attention of every single major news outlet for months, and the center of fierce debates surrounding race relations, use of force, and gun legislation, George's acquittal may have kept him from losing his freedom, but having one of the most polarizing and recognizable faces on the planet meant that he now had a significant new challenge: living a normal life despite being one of the most hated men in America. Zimmerman's attorney described his client as a marked man, someone who had to take extreme safety precautions as both he and his parents began receiving numerous death threats. Now faced with the reality that his life would be in danger possibly forever, he began wearing body armor and a disguise while in public, keeping a firearm on him at all times. With so much vitriol being spread around, conventional wisdom would have led you to expect that someone like this would want to keep a low profile for good, and do everything he could to stay out of trouble. Unfortunately, George Zimmerman decided to pick another path entirely. Mere days after the trial ended, George made headlines after a supposed heroic act, where he saved a family of 4 out of a burning, overturned SUV. 2 men had apparently helped the family out of the vehicle, and police later confirmed that one of them was indeed George. With public hate against him so strong, it sparked an entirely new conspiracy that he had made the whole thing up in an effort to rehabilitate his image, with many referring to these conspiracy theorists as Zimmerman rescue truthers. But even with this little amount of positive coverage, things became worse for the infamous shooter yet again in September of 2013, only 2 months after his acquittal, when police received a phone call from his estranged wife Shelley, who had separated from him and petitioned for a divorce in the wake of the Trayvon Martin trial. According to her 911 call, the terrified lady can be heard pleading with the dispatcher to send police over quickly, after George had entered the home, gone into a heated argument with her father, resulting in George smashing Shelley's iPad, and then punching his soon-to-be ex-father-in-law in the face. She described George as being outside sitting in his car brandishing a firearm, menacingly telling her to step closer, and threatening to shoot her whole family. About 6 police cars soon showed up, but when they took a statement, Shelley now said that there was no gun involved, and would not be pressing charges. It's unknown if her decision was based on fear. With his wife petitioning for divorce and now telling the media that she had severe doubts about her husband's innocence in the Trayvon Martin case, George was now Tinder's most eligible bachelor as well. Given the notoriety of his real name, he set up profiles on every dating app imaginable using the alias Carter. It wasn't long before he found himself a new girlfriend named Samantha. This storybook romance took a sharp turn in November, however, only a month and a half after the domestic violence incident with his soon-to-be ex-wife. This is when police received a 911 call from a man after Zimmerman got into a road rage incident. The unnamed motorist claimed that Zimmerman brandished a gun from his truck, yelling, "Do you know who I am? I'll expletive kill you." The motorist decided to pull into a gas station to get away and call the police. Zimmerman pursued, but apparently knowing that law enforcement were coming, he fled the scene before they arrived. The same driver called law enforcement a few days later, saying George had found him and showed up at his place of work, but declined to press charges. Jumping forward to November 19th, George's new girlfriend Samantha called 911 after a heated exchange with her boyfriend, where she alleged he had started going through her house smashing things, including eyeglasses and a glass table she had in the living room. After requesting him to leave, she alleged that George then hovered over her, pointing a loaded shotgun in her face. George could be heard screaming at her during the call, followed by an abrupt slam as he shoved her out of her own house, then locked the door. Emergency dispatchers then received a call from George, who, knowing police were on their way, claimed that his girlfriend was going crazy on him and that she instigated the altercation. When asked by dispatchers why he was calling, he stated, "I just want people to know the truth." Authorities soon arrived on the scene, and after receiving keys from Samantha, entered the residence to confront the enraged man, having to push through several obstacles he had placed behind the door to barricade them out. But upon getting inside, they found a calm and cooperative George, who said although he had a weapon, it was securely locked away, and that he had never made any threats against Samantha or pointed it at her. After hearing both sides of the story, they went ahead and hauled him away in cuffs with felony charges of aggravated assault. By December, when he was to be tried, Samantha abruptly changed her story, saying that the police intimidated her into making a false statement about having a gun pointed at her face, despite her also telling emergency dispatchers the same thing on the call. George's attorneys submitted a sworn statement from Samantha saying that not only did George not do any of the things she originally said he did, but that she still wanted to be with him, asking for the restraining order to be lifted. In the footage of the police interrogation, they ask her why she didn't call the police for other episodes of domestic violence, to which she darkly replied, "He always gets off." Despite all of these altercations, in the span of a year, George Zimmerman's life was somehow going to become more intense as his descent into chaos continued. We'll learn more about this after a brief word from our sponsor. In the modern age, internet privacy is more important than ever before, and that's why all surfers of the World Wide Web should be using Atlas VPN. This virtual private network makes all of your internet traffic travel through an encrypted tunnel. This way, it protects you from spying, public Wi-Fi dangers, and hides your IP address and your online activities. What makes Atlas better than the competition is how affordable it is. By clicking the link in the description down below, you can lock in the price of $1.99 per month for 3 years with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Even though that's less than the price of a cup of coffee, they do not skimp on features. Atlas will block all malicious links, ads, and trackers, and notifies you when someone is trying to steal your data. On top of this, you get blazing fast speeds to stream your favorite shows and play the best video games. And on top of that, you are able to protect an unlimited amount of devices on a single subscription. As mentioned before, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount. It means you can get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Time is running out though, so get your deal by clicking the link in the description down below. By the end of 2013, despite beating all charges against him, George was in about $2.5 million of debt. Because of this, he needed to start making some money, but a traditional job was out of the question for the most hated man in the country. This is when he decided to bring out his more artistic side. After a quick trip to the local hobby store, George set up a canvas, ripped open a pack of paintbrushes, and got to work, creating a masterful piece depicting an American flag. After it was completed, he put it up on eBay with a starting bid of 99 cents. Soon enough, the news media caught wind of the story, propelling it to a final legitimate bid price of over $100,000. Only $2.4 million to go. Art critics and pundits around the world slammed Zimmerman's skills as an artist and called his sold paintings murderabilia, attempting to glorify the slaying of the unarmed teenager Trayvon Martin. Zimmerman's American flag artwork also received scrutiny after a person found a striking similarity between his painting and a generic Shutterstock image of an American flag. By this point, the gunman considered himself quite the celebrity, and in February of 2014, to further raise cash, decided to put on a boxing match, with partial proceeds going to charity. According to Zimmerman, he received over 8,000 requests from people who wanted to fight him as soon as he made the announcement, with one of the most notable coming from rapper DMX, who promised he was going to beat his ass. The celebrity boxing promoter Damon Feldman said at the time that this was going to be quite the show for every black person who has been done wrong in the system. The fight between DMX and the Latinx shooter was unfortunately cancelled less than a week after it was announced, with the rapper having never signed the paperwork for the fight and the celebrity boxing promoter stating on Twitter that Zimmerman was the wrong person to put in the ring. Never too far from controversy herself, celebrity comedian and provocateur Roseanne Barr came under fire when she retweeted someone who had doxed the home address and phone number of George Zimmerman's parents, Robert and Gladys. Although she deleted the tweet shortly thereafter, many people online accused Roseanne of encouraging vigilante violence and harassment of the couple. Mr. and Mrs. Zimmerman apparently thought the same thing and slapped Roseanne with a lawsuit. According to the civil complaint, which specified $15,000 in damages, Zimmerman's parents saw it as a clear call for a lynch mob. The complaint alleges that Roseanne justified retweeting the personal information by saying, "I thought it was good to let people know that no one can hide anymore." Further stating, "If Zimmerman isn't arrested, I'll retweet his address again, maybe go over to his house myself." Although things were quiet for about a year after the doxing attempts, Zimmerman now had another girlfriend, and in January of 2015 made headlines after he was booked into the John E. Polk Correctional Facility. Officers had encountered her at a traffic stop and learned of an incident a few days prior where George allegedly threw a wine bottle at her. As Zimmerman made his appearance in court, his attorney stated, "It's clear he hasn't been very lucky with the ladies the last few months. If you haven't guessed already, the charges were dropped after the girlfriend decided to amend her story and stated that she didn't want to press charges." George still couldn't seem to stay out of violent encounters though, and by May of 2015 made headlines again after a supposed shootout on the road with a man named Matthew Apperson. Zimmerman and Apperson had apparently had an incident prior to this where Matt had yelled obscenities at George over the death of Trayvon Martin. Zimmerman had apparently brandished a gun and made death threats, and although nothing came from this particular incident, the May 2015 encounter was far more dramatic, with Apperson firing a shot, barely missing Zimmerman's head. Unlike today's main character that always seemed to slip out of jail time, his enemy was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted second-degree murder, although he was recently granted a new trial. As if George Zimmerman was born for controversy, public outcry reached a fever pitch when in May of 2016, he decided to put the gun that was used to kill Trayvon Martin up for auction, with the final accepted bid reaching $250,000, with some of the proceeds benefiting an anti-Black Lives Matter group as well as anti-Hillary Clinton efforts. A month after the divorce from his wife Shelley was finalized in 2016, George George made headlines again after a dramatic bar fight. George's account of the incident conflicts with witness statements, but according to people who saw the events unfold, Zimmerman approached a man to talk about his Confederate flag tattoos. According to witness statements to police, he said, "I love your tattoos. My name is George Zimmerman. You know, that guy who killed Trayvon Martin," even taking out his driver's license to prove he was telling the truth. Another man seated at the table said, "You're bragging about that?" and told him to get out of here, clearly wanting nothing to do with him. A heated exchange took place between them, which ended with George getting punched in the face, breaking his glasses, with bar staff having to separate the two parties. Everyone involved called 911, with Zimmerman claiming that the man simply recognized him from across the bar, saying, "I'm going to kill you," before striking him.
This man just punched me in the face.
Okay, is he still there?
Yep. He said he's gonna kill me.
Does he have any
He
weapons?
just sent like 3 or 4 cops.
Although Zimmerman was considered by police to be the victim of this case, witnesses all shared the same statement that the altercation began with George bragging about the killing of the young teen to other bar patrons. Jumping forward again to 2018, George made headlines after threatening Jay-Z, who was producing the documentary series Rest in Power: The Trayvon Martin Story. Zimmerman apparently warned Jay-Z that he would feed him to an alligator if he approached him. A private investigator who filed harassment and stalking charges against Zimmerman, who after being approached about the docuseries sent him dozens of text messages, phone calls, and voicemails threatening him. George ended up pleading no contest to the charges and requested a public defender, stating that he was still $2.5 million in debt with no viable income. At the end of the day, he received a $763 fine, had to relinquish all firearms, and was given 10 years of probation. Despite George's aversion to Jay-Z's film, he did appear in the 2019 documentary The Trayvon Hoax, written and directed by right-wing provocateur Joel Gilbert, where he's interviewed in a clean button-up shirt, recounting his life as a church-going pillar of the community, who spent his time volunteering with a troubled teen program, mentoring 2 teenage African-American boys. Upon the film's release, George filed a lawsuit against a slew of people connected to Trayvon Martin's trial, including Trayvon's parents, the prosecuting attorney, and many of the witnesses who testified against him, claiming that they were all part of a grand civil conspiracy to frame, defraud, and deny him due process. After nearly 2 years, the judge overseeing the case threw it out, stating that Zimmerman and his attorneys had failed to provide any fraudulent representation. He also filed a lawsuit against Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren over tweets they sent out decrying the rise of gun violence, citing the Trayvon Martin case as an example. In a 30-page document, he accused them of defamation with actual malice, or at a minimum, a reckless disregard for the truth. And this brings us to current day, where George remains a white-hot center of controversy. He has been banned from both Bumble and Tinder, was apparently suspended from Twitter after sharing a topless photo of an ex-girlfriend without her consent, and all things considered, it seems like he's still likely to make news headlines again, if you just wait long enough. So there you have the story of one of the most controversial men in recent American history, and it is unknown what George Zimmerman will be up to next. And on that thought, I think I'll end the video here. So until next time, thanks for watching.